Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Other Half, where we talk about the other half, that's us women, as they approach the start of the back half of their career. My name is Wendy Parrish, and this is the fourth episode of the series where I catch up with some of the fabulous women I've been lucky to cross paths with in my life to get advice and perspective on their career and how they're planning for this second half. A few things before we get started. If you missed any episodes, you can find them on my LinkedIn profile under the featured posts. Secondly, we are live, so feel free to ask any questions in the comments, and we'll try to get to those as they come. And if you want to make sure not to miss any future episodes that you would like to watch live, please just connect with me on LinkedIn. Today's guest, I'm so excited, is Laura Reid Brink. Laura and I went to Vanderbilt together, and while we were friends when we were at Vanderbilt, we really bonded in our first year after graduation when we both lived in London. Laura and I bonded over good music. Psychedelic Furs and Seal were just two of our concert adventures, and the amazing opportunity to explore that amazing city and country. Laura has always had jobs that I could in no way, and a number of reasons, including a very weak stomach, do. So I've been very impressed with her and what she does professionally. She's also the amazing person who came up with the name of this series, The Other Half. Thank you, Laura. So Laura, let me get you set up here. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Wendy.
Well, it's so fun. Can you start by telling the audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am a true Southerner. I live here in Jacksonville, Florida. I am an occupational therapist times, I think 20 plus years now. But I'm very fortunate that I had lots of different work experiences along the way that both, I think, rounded out my professional experience and then also just maybe gave me some different skill sets to bring to the table. And I was just very grateful for them. But it is true, Wendy and I first really bonded in London. And I credit London as the city that taught me the hustle in terms of how when life doesn't necessarily hand you what you want, you need to make it happen. And we landed in the city I just had the ability to work in London. I think the green card and all that was taken care of, but we had to hit the streets running. And I basically had to sell myself and just decided, I think I love those shoes everybody's wearing around here. I need to go sell shoes. And so, just literally barged in the door, hey, Miss America, and convinced them to hire me. And but the best part of all of London was the fact that I got to really spend time with you, Wendy. That was really the best. But
it was so fun.
We
had
great.
A fun group too. And so you came back from London. I remember when I was thinking about it, you had so many interesting jobs at the house for the pregnant teenagers, yeah. And even Jenny Craig. But then you went back to get your master's in occupational therapy in New York.
That's right.
And I think it's good for the audience to know about the different kinds of occupational therapy you've done. And maybe they might have to understand what is occupational therapy because it's a little bit different.
I think that's a good place to start. Occupational therapy, we use functional activities as our basis for therapy. We tend to work in the areas of self-care, leisure, and work. Those are the big groupings. But the goal of the look of therapy is let's engage in a functional activity to get at the underlying impairments in order to help them be more the goal is always independence, and get them back to either a prior level or their highest level of independence. And so, I was fortunate to realize, this is the direction I need to go. I want to be an occupational therapist. I went to Columbia University, a fantastic training, and I particularly appreciated the fact that they had an emphasis on mental health. We did a lot of field work in inpatient, outpatient, lots of experience with group dynamics and all of that. That's one of those skills or one of those experiences that are like, ooh, I'm really glad I have that background, because you just encounter that so regularly, and it really supports. You may have really good clinical knowledge, but if you don't have that little bit of a soft skill in terms of knowing how to interact with people, or really listening and understanding, like, ooh, maybe what's the underlying thing that's going on here. And I credit my work experience for that, but then also I went to a program that really valued and put a lot of emphasis on having a good, strong mental health background.
That's great. It's so important this year, for sure.
Right.
So,
yes.
So you talked a little bit about this, but I wanted to ask you more directly. How did you figure out that you had a passion for occupational therapy?
Well, I think the first thing I figured out is I really love working with people. Mm-hmm. I really love coming alongside them, and that in coming up with that and really understanding that came from a variety of experiences. Right before high school, I went on a mission trip to Jamaica, and it was just very profound, just seeing people that were in need and coming together and working for a common good. I just love that. But you referenced I was a house parent for 25 pregnant teenagers, and that that was baptism by fire. I mean, you were doing everything from driving, cooking, taking to the appointment, being there when the baby was born. I mean, everything. But at the end of the day, it was exhausting. But I thought, I'm investing in people. I love this is sort of my drug of choice. Like, I love coming alongside and empowering them, and I wasn't scared off by messy. And it can get real messy. You can imagine if you're with 25 pregnant teenagers, it can get messy. Yeah. And it did. But I could handle it. And so in some ways, I would tell anybody, particularly if you're standing right there at the beginning of your career and you're thinking, well, I'm just doing this job and maybe it doesn't really seem to do anything for me. You can always pull something out of that.
Yeah, yeah.
Even if you're waitressing, you still got to walk up to that table and sell yourself.
Right.
And because that's going to impact your tip.
Yeah.
So everything, you can use it all. You can use it all. And I'm lucky that I've, connected some dots and realized, okay, you need to do this OT thing. But I do have to say this happened that was very interesting. I was in graduate school to be a social worker. I was ready to go, got the acceptance letter, was figuring out the next step, and I just realized I can't do this. I get parts of this, but I can't do all of this. It's not, I want to help people, but I think there's a next level that I want to go. And the next best move for me was I got some contacts and I sat down with them and I said, I want you to tell me about your job. I want you to tell me what you like, what you don't like. If you're comfortable telling me about your salary, go ahead and tell me that.
Yeah.
And that was one of the best steps in early career development that I did, because people just were willing to tell me. They were willing to tell me all about their jobs. And I remember this one lady was hilarious. She said, what did I think was a good salary? And my salary that I quoted was much too low for her. And she said, why don't we see what that salary will get you? And she whipped out the paper and she said, are you going to be able to own a house on this salary? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So there was wisdom, practical wisdom, and then there was some real, well, this is what I do for a living kind of wisdom.
Yeah.
And both of it was helpful, but I bumped into an OT.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's
Okay.
when it all kind of came together to me. And I thought, ooh, I like her. I like what she does. And I want to do that.
Yeah. So
Um,
I think that's great advice. My nephew is a freshman at Northeastern University, and he
mhm.
was texting me last week trying to figure out he wants to get a summer job, and because he's trying to figure out like he's
Sure.
starting early, which is good for him for starting early to try to figure out what he might be interested in doing professionally. So.
Hmm.
Let me ask you a question. So, of course, OT, so you figure out I definitely want to do occupational therapy, but it does require additional education.
Oh, yeah.
So, did that cause you any pause, or so how did you think through, having to go back to school and tuition and
Oh,
all that?
did I think about it? I sent off for all the little applications and I can still see them. I stacked them up and I would open each one and they would say what the prerequisites were. And often they had prerequisites that I was not happy about. I saw anatomy, I saw
Oh,
physiology, I saw biology, I saw big bad physics, and I thought it gave me pause. It made me realize this is this is an investment. This is really going to push me personally. Um, but I will say one thing that did happen that was very encouraging for me and sort of gave me the oomph and the feeling like, okay, we're headed in the right direction. I had been accepted to Columbia, but there was one class that I had left to pass, and that was physics. And physics was my big bugaboo.
yeah,
I thought, ooh, if I could get into one of these schools and not have to take physics, I'm going to be all about that.
yeah.
And sure enough, here comes Columbia. And I said, oh, yes, that's where I want to go ahead and take physics. And I promptly, in a state of anxiety, failed the first test. Now, the good
Oh,
news is we could drop one test.
okay.
So I pulled it together. I got a tutor. I spent 8 hours in a Barnes and Noble one Saturday and got myself together, and I made the highest grade on the next test. And for me, what was encouraging and empowering about that is I got through it. I
Yeah,
passed the test. I passed the course, and it gave me that little bit of confidence to say, okay, you got this. You can do this. It was a little scary, but you got it. And it gave me a boost of confidence, really.
yeah. That's good to work through that.
Yeah.
Did you have any sort of aha moments in your career, and what were they, and what did you learn? It sounds like you had a little bit of that just in taking your physics, but do you have any other
Mhm.
examples?
Well, I think in OT, just like many jobs, your first couple of years out, you're just getting the lay of the land. You're coming up to speed. You're kind of getting your clinical skills underneath your belt. But you start to move into this kind of great little season where, okay, I've got my basics. I know how to approach a patient. I know how to categorize and focus on what's important. And maybe you've taken some great courses along the way that's taught you some additional skills. And I took NOT world. There's a thing called NDT, but it wasn't NDT. It was a different type of approach. That's the neurodevelopmental treatment. And they pull that in mainly when you've had a stroke or
Okay.
if you're a traumatic brain injury patient, but because you often come out with weakness. And it's knowing how to address that. And I had taken this course that was, gosh, I mean, it was like 15 weeks. Oh, it was rough. I mean, it was really intense, but fabulous. So well worth it. And I had been using those techniques, I guess, for a couple of years. And one of my first home care patients, he had had a stroke on December 20, and I saw him on January 7th. And we worked like the Dickens. And I was able to restore his arm,
Oh,
get
that's awesome.
his arm full range of motion back, you know, functional strength, and I was so pleased with that. And he was pleased too. He invited me to his 30th wedding anniversary. So, I mean, it was a win-win.
Yeah.
He was thrilled about his arm. I love being at the party. I got
Yeah.
to really see his wife. He gave me apples all the time. He was always giving me apples. I loved it.
Did he have like an apple tree or something? That's
But
nice.
well, he was from upstate New York, and he was always going back, and he was always
Oh.
coming back with apples. He was like, I've got a box of apples for you." I'm like, "Okay, that's great." Which I loved him. He was fabulous. And then I think what's fun right now is where I work at Oak Hill Academy School for Autism. I don't know what it is about kids, but you can get to that answer fast. And
Oh, good.
it's just been really neat to try different sensory things. And they come to the table with so many behaviors. I mean, you just name it, on the floor, jumping on the chair, running around the room. I mean, every day you go in and there's just some giant puzzle that you've got to solve.
Yeah.
And what I love about pediatrics and kids and doing this is you can drill down, you can try a strategy, and that little teacher can circle back to you and say, "You're not going to believe what happened. He's sitting in the chair now." "Oh, you're
Oh,
kidding.
that's
No way."
great. Yeah.
And that's what's fun. And that's why, I've always tried to do a good job in whatever setting I've worked. But in this one, my deal has been get to them quick, get the answer quick, get the strategy quick, get on it quick, because it's so satisfying to have them turn around and say, "I can't believe that worked."
Oh.
Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes
Right.
we bottomed out, crash and burn. We'll try again. Who cares? We'll just keep trying.
Yeah.
But it requires a level of creativity that you just almost couldn't figure out when you were in school.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
just are pulling at everything to make it work, and it just is. I mean, I think the thing that's exciting is later in your career you can bump up to something that's kind of really engaging and inspiring.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wouldn't have thought that. Oh, okay. Later in your career it's going to be more stimulating intellectually and challenging. That's a great thing. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And to be able to see the impact so quickly has
Yes.
got to be so
Yes.
motivating and um, so so a quick question. The healthcare industry is something I know almost nothing
Woo.
about other than being a consumer. And it is expected to have huge growth due to the population changes and really has so much room for improvement. If you were talking to a recent college graduate that was interested in going into some aspect of healthcare, what changes do you predict that they should keep in mind when considering a career in healthcare?
Well, it's interesting. I think, there's certain immovables that just come into the arena of healthcare that you just can't get around. It
Like,
always
can you give us
seems.
like oh, go
Well,
ahead.
for
You were going to.
example, I would say you always have too many patients. You always have rather large caseloads that you may have to navigate around. The documentation always seems to be a factor. And this has been across the board. I've sat across from physicians. I've sat across from nurses. Everyone seems, I mean, if you give them a quiet moment and say, "How's it going?" They always comes back to documentation. It's
Yeah.
just, it's exhaustive. It takes so much time, and it takes away from your patient care. It is required. You have to do it. It's non-negotiable. But it does make you have to understand. I think when you're on the other side of it, you're thinking, "I really want to work in healthcare." That's wonderful. But you've got to recognize that a large portion of your time may be spent documenting, and that's not always what gets us excited. Getting out of bed is,
Yeah.
but it's you have to. That's always a constant. Another thing that is
Can I
I
ask you a
have only
question? I'm sorry to
yes,
interrupt.
yes. Go
Calls
ahead, say
everywhere.
that again.
Do you see technology helping at all with that documentation, or not really? Because whether you're writing it or saying it or type, do you feel like technology could help ease up the documentation?
I think that's what I can only speak to my experience. I think
Yeah.
we all were looking forward to and wanting that leap into the technology piece for the electronic documentation. The dark side of the electronic documentation is they expanded the note. They expanded what they wanted us to write. There were
Okay.
more drop down menus of that the what they wanted us to cover bloomed because
Yeah.
they could because they could saturate it with drop down menus and all these different places that you could put in more information, which is great for them in terms of data collection and getting a handle on the types of patients and all that. But for the clinician, it just became more. It didn't necessarily make it run faster. It just, in my experience, it added a little bit more work. Now,
Okay.
that's always tough when they first roll out, and you can get quicker, but that was my experience.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry I interrupted. You were going
No,
to
no,
say
no.
some other things that were
And then
probably not going to change.
one thing that I have observed in my own years as being an OT is Medicare goes through cycles in terms of how much money they'll reimburse our services. And when they make cuts, you feel those cuts. You
Okay.
feel them in your facility because you either have to work with less or people are let go. And when I first came out in 19, when I can't even remember when I graduated,
Yeah. Don't say that year. Don't say that
yeah,
year.
here. Okay, when I came out, let me tell you something. I will never forget. My father called me. My father has worked in healthcare he just retired, and he said, "You better find a job." He said, "Because I'm telling you, they're pushing through changes that could very well impact you."
Yeah.
And so that really was my first wake up call. And you talk to therapists that were working, I think it was called PPS, but you talk to them before and the after, and it was a whole world different.
Yeah.
Just a lot of cuts, the way in which, they got reimbursed for patients, everything changed. And even though it's a change in the system, it really filters down and you feel it on the clinician level,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
That is something you wouldn't really think about.
Yeah.
So, as a clinician, you're a little bit different than some other people I've had on the show so far. How long do you plan on working? Because I assume your job is a little bit physical, or do you think about like how long you hope to work? Or
Well, I'll tell you, I remember talking to some friends when we were working at skilled nursing, and we used to have this joke that we used to say, "Do you know any older therapists?" Because you never seem to know any older therapists. I mean, in certain settings, it is a young person's game. I
yeah,
mean, and that tends to be in more of the acute and the skilled nursing, because those patients require your physical abilities to facilitate them towards improving and returning to their prior level. I mean, so if you have a patient and he's, the tough ones were when they were newly had a stroke, maybe they couldn't sit up on the side of the bed.
right,
Well, that was you. You were the person that came in there. And I can remember you would just crawl in that bed. You would get up alongside them. You figured out how to position your knee. I can still feel my hand going up. Okay, I need you to sit up, go on, sit up for me. Put their hand. I mean, you never know how heavy an arm is until you're dealing with a flaccid arm.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
and all of that takes a toll on your body.
right,
I
yeah,
mean, we
yeah,
would we would regularly, and sometimes, like when you're new and you're excited and you want to just set the world on fire, and then you'll be crawling all over, trying to help the patient. Sometimes you don't know about good body mechanics yet.
right,
When you're younger, you still got to. I can remember, gosh, this is just coming to me, Wendy. But when I was in New York and I was doing my clinical, I would lean over the table in standing when I would be doing my documentation. And the older therapist, she came over to me. She said, "Now you need to sit down because
Oh,
you cannot be doing that. I mean,
yeah.
you keep doing that, you're not going to be able to do this. So you
Right.
need to go on and sit down."
Yeah.
But yes, to answer your question, as you get into OT, particularly in certain settings, and I'm thinking acute, skilled nursing, you see, wow, this takes a toll on me. And a lot of us kind of make pivots. You start to make pivots based on, I don't know if I can be, some people get injured.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, people get injured, or they recognize this is taking too much a toll on me physically, and they
Right.
move into management, or they move into another setting.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Okay,
so
so
that's
I want to say something and show a few things because if you don't know Laura, and maybe you've never seen me in person because on LinkedIn you're connected with all these people you've never met. Um, I'm almost 6 feet tall, and Laura,
yeah.
how tall are you?
5'2" on a good day.
Okay, so I have a few pictures I wanted to
Oh
show
yay,
actually.
bring it.
So here we are in London, your flatmates,
Oh my God.
and out on the town.
Yeah.
Here we are. I can't even figure out when this picture was taken, but it seems
When
like a
was
while ago.
that? Oh,
And then
fabulous.
this one was
Yeah.
probably more recent at our college reunion, and
Oh
I
yes.
was I was doing the squat down, so
And I
we were
know
the
you were doing the
same.
squat to get right on down there. Bless
Yeah,
your heart. Look at
yeah.
you.
But Laura, you're small but mighty. I know you've rolled over some pretty heavy people in your job. So I mean, like in the bed, kind of, to
Yeah.
get
Oh
them
yeah.
to what they
Sure. Yeah.
need to do.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so one of the things I love to talk to you about because you do such a good job of like listening to podcasts and things like that, but when I just am curious to learn sort of your approach to financial planning for
Oh,
retirement, and sort of your thoughts around sort of planning to be able to maybe even partially retire at some point.
well, I know this is going to sound a little different, but working with all those patients, I bumped up against some patients that I thought was doing a really good job of aging.
Uh huh.
And we would have little discussions. And I would
Oh,
say, now,
nice.
let's talk about you because you're pretty fabulous. And I
Yeah.
need to know what is your secret.
Yeah.
And often it would emerge that, they worked late in their life,
Uh huh. Uh huh.
or they had some great habits, like they walked everywhere, or they just made it a real priority to just get dressed and get out of bed and the whole bit. But what started to sink in my head was, I think it's probably pretty important to just work deep in your life, maybe not full time, but at least on some part time level.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so part of my thinking has been, I want to work in some capacity,
Uh huh.
probably past what most people would deem normal retirement years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, right now I'm loving working at the school. And I'd love to find some way that once I feel like the arc of the OT is sort of fading, if I could work in some other capacity. So that's
Yeah.
one thing I've always sort of held in my head. This is, I have tried to just consistently invest all through the years.
Okay.
Like for instance, just I had a lot of things automated that I would just stuff into either, a 401k or my Roth, and just literally fix it and forget it. Just don't even look at it. And that was part of my strategy. Initially, when it came up, I realized there were a lot of things I didn't know, and so I took it upon myself just to learn. And I would
Right.
listen to, there was this fabulous program that was called Marketplace Money.
Uh
It
huh.
was a friend of Marketplace, and it came on every day every Saturday at about, I think it was 4 o'clock. and I would clean my house and listen to Marketplace Money. And I just began to learn some basics of personal finance.
Yeah.
Just, hey, from the basics, like, why don't you look at that interest rate on that credit card? What are you
Right.
thinking? Check that out. How to avoid PMI insurance when you buy a house. Why you want to push hard to buy pay your house down. All those things. I needed a foundation. I needed
Yeah.
just a background. So I worked off of that, and I just have tried to be consistent over time in terms
Right.
of, a certain amount that goes to saving, a certain amount that goes to investing, a certain amount that goes to giving. And I just, I think all of us are sort of hanging back and crossing our fingers,
Yeah.
that
So, well, I know.
it's an unknown.
Yeah.
It is an unknown. And
Yeah.
I did the best that I could with the information that I had.
Yeah.
And I would say another, what I call secret strategy, is I try to live below my means. I
Yeah.
try, and, I drive an old car.
Yeah.
Everybody knows I go to the Goodwill. I do.
Yeah.
I love it. I can't help it. And, the flip side of that is you might find some really great alligator shoes for $6. I've done it,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's been, it may sound not very sophisticated, but that's kind of the
No,
approach that I've
I think
taken.
that's a really important message to educate yourself and remember the basics. And yeah, I think that's great. So one of my Laura always, I'll just give you a little background. She is always telling me little sayings and and one of the favorite ones, especially this year, that Laura, I say it all the time. Don't borrow trouble. Don't borrow trouble, because it's so easy to worry about things that haven't yet. But so that's my favorite saying from you. I'm curious what your favorite saying for you is.
I think because sometimes when you are with a patient or a kid or that has autism, you're not always sure how this is going to end. You're not
Yeah.
always sure what you're going to do. So one thing I hear myself saying, two things I often hear myself saying. Okay, well, here's the good news, because often you'll be in front of a patient and they maybe have had, a really difficult stroke, or they've lost some capability, and I always try and pull out like, ooh, okay, here's what's still good. Here's what we've got going on that's working. So I often say, well, now here's the good news.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then another thing that I often say is, you know what, we got this. We got this.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
almost is to say, okay, you know what, we're in this together. It's going to work out.
Yeah.
It may get kind of bumpy, but we're gonna get this.
Yeah.
And those are the things. And I say it to my patients. I say it to the parents. Some of it is just, when you rely on it to yourself.
Yeah.
When you're trying to keep yourself together,
Positive. Yeah.
Those are the things that those are the phrases that are kind of my go-tos. And I know they're my go-tos because people say it to me. She said, well, go on, tell me what the good news is. Just get to it. Because, we're up against it. So just go ahead and find it.
Yeah.
What's the good news?
Yeah. I love that. That's awesome. Okay. So you've talked about Marketplace Money when you're sort of first starting out. Do you have, what's your current favorite either podcast or blog or book or newsletter that you like to make sure to?
There are, I'll tell you what there's one that I really kind of have been going to. It's always been there. I always go to it. But in certain seasons, I need more escape. And people that know me know that I love sports. And I listen to Dan Patrick very regularly. Wendy, ESPN.
I'm like, I have no idea who that is.
I know, Dan Patrick. I know. See, I got to bring her up to speed. Okay, he was on Sports Center.
Is he a Jaguar?
Yeah, no. He is a national sports commentator. He's fantastic. He covers it all, Wendy.
Okay.
Football, baseball. basketball. I think he likes basketball best because he tends to just jump to that story when I think, there's a real good football story out there that you're not hitting on. But we'll get to basketball. We'll get through this. Okay, Dan. Yeah, okay. We'll talk about the Lakers.
Yeah.
But I have to have that. It is pure escape to me. It is pivotal.
Yeah.
I listen to that all the time. And then there's this other one that's called, oh gosh, I'm forgetting the name of it, but it's the girls from Ballard Design.
Oh,
And it's about
I don't
decorating.
know.
Yeah, I can pull it up real quick. But I
Okay.
love that one too because it's all about beautiful interiors,
Uh-huh.
homes, and I find that I particularly want to listen to it when I feel like my house is a little messy because
Okay.
I feel like it helps me in terms of just being able to. Oh, it's called How to Decorate,
Oh,
and it's
interesting.
a
Okay.
great one because they take all kind of little listener challenges, and they will, that everything from how to lay a rug out, and do you put your TV over the fireplace, and all these little challenges. And so
Yeah.
it has a practical end. You can also kind of glean and understand, well, what's the new hot trend, like what's coming, what's the color of the year, all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just like having three girls that you know really well, and they're in your back seat, and we're just talking about interiors.
Oh, that's
And
fun.
again, I love the whole escapism
Yeah.
piece to it. I
Yeah.
love that.
That's
I mean,
awesome.
yeah,
Okay, I have another question.
yes,
Um, so I feel like working from home on Zoom calls all day uh,
ooh,
is starting to sort of mess my body up a little bit.
yes,
So I've got my ball over here I can sit
hmm
on. I've got a riser and things like that. But as an OT, do you have any exercises or advice for people who are having to adjust to, sitting in front of the computer all day?
Well, I will tell you, this happened to me personally. Okay, fast forward March. I all of a sudden was grounded very quickly. I had been at the school. I love looking at my little watch, and I was doing like 8,000 steps. I was doing fabulous, and that ground to a halt. And I was sitting a ton, and I wasn't moving as much, and I did start to get some really significant kind of low backish pain.
Uh huh.
It was very, and I hate to say this, and I hope everybody's okay, but my butt hurt,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was something that, and I think the thing that was fascinating is it came on quick. I was sort of surprised. It didn't take too long. And I think from the front end, we need to all recognize, they're calling sedentary lifestyle the new smoking.
Oh, I didn't know that.
We need to recognize that sitting is really a big problem. All right. So on the front end, I would say, you need to be intentional about getting out of the sitting position.
Okay.
Meaning, I would, if you can take that call, and it can be a headset, not something cranking your ear like this, but you can actually walk around your house, move, 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 move.
Okay.
Critical. The other end, you know, I mean, it depends upon, without really seeing you, and, if it's a true dysfunction, true issue, then you
Right.
may have to take it the step further. But the normal kind of things to think about is heat and ice. I'm a big fan of heat. I
Oh,
personally have found heat to be my go-to,
okay.
and that in the form of a heating
Heating
pad.
pad.
We
Yeah.
all need to. There is so much value in yoga. It is so fabulous, and it doesn't have to be for an hour and a half and hot.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
I
can
hate
do.
hot
There
yoga.
is so much online. It is astounding. But being able to do, a full range of motion. See, that's what's so fascinating. You get stuck in your world, and you're just moving all just forward and back, forward and back, forward and back. You're not really rotating. You're not
Yeah.
really weight shifting. I
Yeah.
think the ball is a great idea. Um, I think what should emerge is this need for variety. And see,
Uh-huh.
that's the thing that's so tough about the whole sedentary lifestyle is it puts you on lockdown.
Yeah.
You're in the chair, and then another thing is look at your chair.
Yeah.
I had this. I mean, it's great looking. It's a great looking chair. I used it, but it was terrible for my back.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, if you are at home and you are having to do all these Zoom calls and you work from home, invest in a good chair with good lumbar support and be cognizant of how am I moving my body throughout the day.
Yeah.
Because you need to have that all important 90-90-90 posture, meaning my hips are at 90, my knees are at 90, and my ankles are at 90.
Oh,
And
interesting. Okay.
watch that neck. When you're leaning in and you're like, oh, well, that's not a good posture for your neck. You've got to watch that because your head is heavy.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
you move that chin, see, watch my chin as I go out over my center of gravity.
Yeah.
Well, if I stay in that static posture, that's not great alignment.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
can happen over time is your body says, okay, you're pushing me. I'm
Yeah.
going to start building more bone back there. And
Oh.
you can get the bump.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Because over time, I mean, that's what we all have a phone and we're all doing this.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just take a look, just thumb through the history books. You don't see too many of the people walking around looking like this. And that's sign number one that we've got to look at our postural alignment.
Yeah. Okay.
Consider it. Be
Whew.
aware.
I'm gonna put a sticky note on
Well,
my.
that's
This.
how you start. You've got to take it seriously
Yeah.
because pain is an interrupter. Because I'll never forget my fabulous kinesiology professor, Gordon Williamson. Love you. He showed us, let's watch the person walk. Now watch that person walk in pain. And immediately the gentle rotation that happened through the spine, you moved in such a way to compensate. Your body, pain it changes things. It changes
Yeah.
the way you move in the world and you don't get that full, rich engagement of movement.
Yeah.
And over time
Okay.
that can lead to, structural changes. It can shortening. I mean, it just muscle weakness.
Yeah.
It's a cycle. It's a cycle.
Yeah.
So invest in good equipment
Okay. Okay.
first and
Woo.
foremost.
My family friend, he was just on Shark Tank last Friday because he's got a
Really?
chair he's selling. Yeah, it's called. I'll give him a plug, even though I don't have a
Yeah.
chair, but it's called All 33, and the Sharks didn't invest. Sorry,
Oh,
I don't want to
what?
spoil it. But the whole premise of the chair is that it's better for your back.
You really,
Yeah.
really
So
got to stay on top of that.
yeah, yeah. Well, Laura, thank you so much for coming on the
Thank
show. It was
you.
so fun. If someone, I know you're not on LinkedIn because you don't want more places where you have to put your eyeballs, your social media out, which I completely respect and admire. But if someone wants to, like, email you or get in touch with you, what would be the best way to do that? Probably
Well, let's see. I'm on
Facebook
Facebook.
or yeah.
I'm
Okay.
on Facebook. If
Yeah.
you see me, I'll friend you. You
Yeah.
know, I
Perfect.
can get. I mean, you can flow through Wendy, and I don't know. Is that bad? It's probably not
No,
the best
that is
way
not
to.
bad at all.
Yeah,
Not bad at all.
I'm on Facebook.
Okay. Well, awesome. Well, Laura, thank you again, and thank you for all the great advice. And
It was fun.
I hope you have a good rest of the night.
Thank you so much. I had a great time. Thank you for having me.
Oh, good. Okay.
Bye,
Bye.
Wendy. Bye.